breathe underwater.
Welcome to the show, y'all. I'm your host, Joe Baker. And look here, Randy, he has a choice to make here. He has to choose between telling the white supremacist organization that he belongs to that he has a biracial son, and if he does that, he risks life and limb. At the minimum, he risks being exiled, right, from the organization. And that has a whole lot that comes with it. He won't be allowed to come on the compound without threat to himself. He'll have to probably spend the rest of the time that he has in protective custody, unless he, wants to stay on the compound and deal with whatever it is that's going to happen. Or he can continue to deny his son and his ex-girlfriend and the relationship that he had with her. He can choose that. But his cellie is not going to let him go that way. His cellie is pushing the issue, but his cellie has decided against going to the organization himself and telling them that he knows this information about Randy because he wants to be lifted up in the organization as well. So if he can get Randy to go and tell them that he's stepping down, he wants to keep it on to the organization, tell them that he wants to step down and retire and nominate. He wants Randy to nominate him as his replacement so that they'll start to look at him in a favorable way, and he'll continue to hold this over Randy's head as leverage. He wants that power. He don't really care about Randy one way or the other. Now, Randy is caught up because now he really is enjoying, even though it's not as fruitful, it's not as often as he would like, he's really enjoying, the opportunity to get to know his son. But he's caught up in, what do I say? What do I tell the person that I haven't known for the last almost 20 years why I walked away from? What do I say? See, this was a confrontation of himself. This, you could easily say it had a lot to do with his son and all this, but this had everything to do with Randy. This was Randy's problem. Now, Kenny suffered from it, but this is Randy's problem. He had made some decisions in his life because he was afraid, and that's what a lot of us do. It's what a lot of us do. We make decisions that are going to affect other people because we are afraid. And most of the time, those decisions that we make end up making the situation worse than we could ever imagine. Because you got to think about it. A lot of people, when they go to prison, I'm telling y'all, listen to what I'm saying when I say this. A lot of people, when they go to prison, they give up on themselves. And they'll tell themselves whatever you have to tell yourself to be able to make it through the situation. And you will convince yourself that whatever's going on in here stays in here. What we don't factor in is that whatever we are doing in here is going to affect those that we love on the town, whether we have contact with them or not. And I can attest to that. I sold drugs in here. I did all kinds of stuff in here. I didn't have the contact that I wanted with my two sons, the physical contact, being able to go to the games, teach them how to dribble, talk to them about their first girlfriend, all of those types of things that a father would want to do. I didn't have the opportunity to do those types of things in the way that I wanted to do them. I had to do them in a visit. I had to do them over the phone. I wasn't there to set up in their room in private while they sit on the bed and ask me these questions and talk to them in a way that a father should. But the things that I was doing in here, however it made it to them, it made it to them. Because when they say that the streets talk, the penitentiary talks too. It's almost like a symbiotic relationship. the streets and the penitentiary is like one and the same. And whatever you're doing in the streets, it makes its way around. That street gossip. What are you doing? Whatever you're doing in the penitentiary, it makes its way around. It's penitentiary gossip. And the people that you would hope wouldn't even hear about it, they hear about it. Because you're in the penitentiary probably most of the time with somebody that knows you. And y'all, excuse me, I'm still a little sick. You're probably in the penitentiary with somebody that knows you and knows your family. And whatever you're doing, they're going to tell their family. Then it's going to make its way around the town that you live in. And before you know it, it's going to make its way to your loved ones. The behavior. Now, in this situation, somehow or another, what Randy was doing in the penitentiary, it didn't make its way to Kenny. It didn't make its way to Kenny. His grandparents, meaning Randy's parents, they knew what was going on based off of conversations that they've had with Randy as they went to visit him, plus the tattoos, the lifestyle that he had chosen. They were totally against it. Totally against it. But they knew why he had pushed away his son. They knew why he had pushed that girl away, the mother of his son that he loved. He really cared about this girl. But what they didn't understand is that Randy himself did not know he had been manipulated and tricked. He didn't know that. So now, like I say, he's got a choice to make. What do you do? What would you do? Because he has to decide. His cellie is growing impatient with him. And he understands what his cellie is trying to do. He knows his cellie is trying to use this to blackmail him, to help him get a position of authority. But he's afraid that if this idiot gets a position of authority, he's going to do some crazy things. And he's going to always use Randy's reputation within the organization to back him up and to push his agenda. So now he has to make this choice. A month has gone by. He's still writing his son. He's even writing his ex-girlfriend, the mother of his son. And they're glossing over the situation a little bit. They stop asking him why. He says, I'll tell you when the time is right. So they stop asking him. They just chalked it up as to, he couldn't deal with being involved in their lives and being in prison at the same time, which is what a lot of people do. Now, that wasn't true, but they just chalked it up to that. So finally, one day Randy decides he's going to tell. He's going to tell the mother of his son. But he asked her to come to visit him on a special visit. Meaning, a special visit, you don't have to get on the list. You can he'll fill out the form, send it to the warden, and then the warden will allow a one-time special visit of the individual that he's trying to get to come in to see him. And then any more visits after that, she'll have to get on his regular visitation list. So the warden approves this special visit. And he asked his ex not to tell their son that she's coming to see him. He wants her to see him first. He wants her to know the truth and to help him explain to their son. So that weekend comes and she comes to visit him. She's there to visit. She sees him when he walks in. He's bigger, he's older. She's older too. And she sees immediately the tattoos on his face, on his arms. She sees immediately that something's off here. So they sit down at the table. They didn't even hug or embrace. He saw her, he smiled. She saw him, she smiled, but it was awkward. And they sat down looking at each other, and she couldn't help herself. She said, what happened to you? And he put his head down, and when he raised his head up, he looked her right in the eyes, and he told her that I was afraid. I had to do this to make it through this. And she said, but this is hatred towards me and your son. He put his head down again and acknowledged what she said. He said, "You're right." And then he proceeded to explain to her the day that he got robbed and all of his stuff got taken and how they got all of his stuff back. It made him feel as if he would be protected and safe with them. So he joined. But he knew that he couldn't have a relationship with them if he joined this organization. And he said, "That's why I told you to go your way. I wanted you to be happy. And I knew that I would have to do or say something to hurt you and my son to make it through this. So it was best that I severed all ties before I got to that. And I kept this secret." Now, keep in mind, they're in the visitation gallery, right? They're in the visitation gallery. And other people are in the VG. And you see a few of his brothers, Aryan Nation brothers, they're in the VG, and they're looking at him like they can't even focus on their visits anymore. They're looking at him, and they see him at this table with this black girl. So a couple of them get up, and they come over to the table, and they say, "Randy, bro, what's going on? Why are you sitting at the table with this nigga?" And he looks up at him, and he tells him, "Watch your mouth." Now, he wasn't expecting to have to do it like this, but he said this is just as good a time as any because he still had love in his heart for her. And he wasn't going to tolerate anybody talking to her like this. He knew what the consequences of what he was about to do was going to bring. He knew what this meant. And he looked at both of them and he told them, he said, "Look, man, I'm done. This is the mother of my son." So they both looked at him and looked at her and said, "You got a nigga son?" He jumps up from the table and he pushes him back. Now the sergeant over the VT, he rushes over to the area. He said, "Hold up, what's going on over here?" Makes them go back to their table. Now they're sitting at the table and they're staring at him like, "Yeah, soon as this is over with, you know what this means." So he continues to tell her everything that happened and what's going on. And she's looking at him like, "You brought me up here for this? Why?" And he told her, he said, "I needed you to see me. I needed you to find out first before I told my son." Now she's hurt and she's angry, but it was a part of her, it was a small part of her that understood. And I want y'all to understand something. It's a lot of people in here, black, white, and Latino, that join organizations in here not because they want to, but out of fear. Out of fear. And see, we don't really look at people of color that join organizations out of fear in the same way we look at white people that join Aryan Nation organizations out of fear, white supremacist groups out of fear. Why? Because other organizations, they are about different things, money, territory, things like that. It's not an organization based on the hatred of a group of people for something they can't change. So that's why we look at that in a worse light. But I want you to take a minute and try to understand fear. I want you to take a minute and try to understand fear. I'm not making excuses for doing it. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. But I want you to try to understand how strong fear is and how it can take parts of you and make you do things that you would never do. Never do. Now think about something in your life that you've done out of fear that you wish you could take back, but you, to this day, don't have the courage to speak out on it because you are afraid of what you might lose. You are afraid of what people might say and what they might think. And that is the fear that Randy had. That's the fear that he had. He was afraid that he would lose his life. Now, keep in mind, at this time, he still doesn't know that they played him. He still doesn't know that. He doesn't know that yet. But he thought that his life was in danger. And that's how wicked some of the things in here get. People in here will make you think that you need them when you don't. They just want to use you. And I'm going to tell you something. And remember this, y'all. You have to be a willing participant. You have to be a willing participant when it comes to somebody oppressing you. You have to be a willing participant when it comes to somebody manipulating and using you. What do I mean by that? How can I be a willing participant if I'm being tricked, right? I'm going to tell you how. We've all done it. We might not understand at the time, but let me tell you how you are a willing participant. By not trusting those foundational things that you learned coming up, telling somebody that you care about the truth, we give in to that fear. And we'll lean more to a stranger, somebody that we don't know, for that which we think we need. And in that, you become a willing participant. You totally ignore the structure, the foundation that you have ready and available to you. He had a loving mother and father ready, right there waiting on him. He had a girlfriend that loved him. But instead of telling them what happened and leaning on them, he decided to go the other way. And it all led back to that bad decision that he made to even commit the crime in the first place, when he put that ideology, that lifestyle that he wanted to live before them. That's what made it bad, y'all. Now, I'm going to tell you the rest of this story when I come back. This has been another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, and I say peace, y'all.